me some questions, or how do you want to go about this today?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
Wake, obviously, they got swept last weekend, but they're still 7-5 in conference and a really talented team and one of the most talented teams in the conference. Just what do you see with them coming in this weekend?
Well, the scariest thing is their ability to punch people out. Like they're really good at it. And to do that, I mean, at times we're okay at punching people out. I think it is an ingredient that separates really good teams when you can strike people out on the mound, and clearly they have done that at an alarming rate. They've got talented position players, tremendous balance, right and left-handed bats, experience, just some of the names I think Tom and their staff has done a really nice job of inserting the correct transfer pieces in this era. So you're looking at a modern day college baseball roster. Like you find people that fit what you need, and they're able to get some nice pieces through the portal. So very balanced. It's a unique park. I was right there in Greensboro for a long time, and that park plays in a very unique way. It can be very small at times, and I think that lends them to fight for strikeouts. And whether you're home or road, I think they've shown the capability to really punch people out. So we have to manage the stuff we see on the mound from them and try to limit our punch outs offensively, which quite frankly we haven't done a great job of, and make them play. And then we got to get back on the horse on the mound. I can't really explain what happened. Mike and I have talked about it, and you go through ebbs and flows, but we've got to kind of get back and get on the horse and get the horse back on the track in terms of just the consistency of pitch execution, because that hasn't been as good in the last couple of weeks as we saw it out of the gate. So if you're not doing that against a club that's this talented, you will pay. And if you're not managing your at bats properly and swinging at the appropriate pitches, this pitching staff can make you pay. So they're an upper end group, very talented, modern day construction of roster. That's why they're as good as they are.
Was there anything, I guess, metrics wise? I know you have the in-depth numbers with Wes and especially Jamie the last couple of weeks that's been different, or is it just? I mean, obviously command's been a bit of it for both of them.
Well, Micah found a couple things, with Jamie in the delivery that he tried to touch on, and you can only do so much in between starts. The guys, part of it is rest and recovery, and then when you fit in your work days, found something that we thought might help. It's really the fastball spray is a little more drastic than it might have been. It's not as far off. When we looked, Mike and I looked at all of the metrics and the heat maps and the locations of everything. It's not as far off as you might think it is. So why it hasn't played as well the last couple of weeks, I can't pinpoint that. But you do have, even at the major league level, you have ebbs and flows in the starting pitching, and then you have some ebbs and flows in who's most effective out of the bullpen. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Some are not identifiable through a physical look or the metrics. Some of it's just the feel and maybe the confidence at the time. Jamie is not really locating the fastball quite as well, just in terms of execution. When we call it, there are times it was in that lane and at the appropriate height. The last couple of weeks, it probably hasn't quite been that. The velocity has, quite frankly, been better. So we're trying to make sure we're pitching and not throwing. Wes's stuff, he's got to keep the fastball down, where Jamie tends to. He can be okay at times with the fastball up, but it's got to be up in the correct spot. There were a lot of no decision up pitches when you look at the recent plots. Wes, when he disguises the secondary pitches, it's far more effective. Sometimes his changeup, he's almost doing so much with it that I think sometimes hitters can see that it is coming out of the hand when he's throwing it correctly and not trying to make it do too much. I think it's much more deceptive. So they're totally different, other than the fact that they throw left-handed. And Micah has had a good week of work, and I fully expect that they'll be sharper this time out. They're back on our home mound. Like, those are some tricky things. Miami was one thing, and then Notre Dame. I've never played in games that you're talking 20, 30-mile-an-hour wind, a turf mound, just different. And I don't know if that factored into it, but it was different. And, we're back at home, and I think that will help too.
Coach, if I can follow up with the strikeouts you were talking about, you mentioned on Tuesday your team chasing a lot. Is that just something that you have to live with an aggressive lineup in just modern day baseball? Or is it a real concern and something that you feel is kind of holding your team back right now?
I think both. I mean, every team is a little bit different. And I don't mind the overall production of the group. I think you probably take it, and I'm too hard at times, I think, on what I see and feel. But I do think the rate of punch out is too high. And the strikeout doesn't always happen on strike 3. And I see at times we might give away strike 1, and that could be taking a pitch for some reason that, not that they were necessarily looking for something else, but just didn't respond and react right and get it, or foul it off. And then you have the chases early in the count, which I've talked to you guys a lot about. So the strikeouts are built in different ways. We remember strike 3, but a lot of these things that lead you to strike 3 might have been handled differently on strike 1 or strike 2, and the swing take decision and the foul ball and trying to do too much and not being on time to the fastball, not giving yourself an ability to adjust properly, all put you in position to be vulnerable. And that's what I see. Our guys have done some damage, and there are guys that have struck out at a pretty high rate, but have still been productive. So when you ask about modern day baseball, maybe that has crept in there, and it's not something that I intended to creep in there. The stuff on the mound, the velocity, the dynamic nature of the breaking pitches, like the stuff we're going to see this weekend, it is hard to string 4 and 5 hits together and have it. So the ball over the fence does give you production. And I do think we've seen some of that. I'm hungry for a little bit more consistent quality and a little more consistent ball in play. That's just me.
Chase was taking BP on the field on Tuesday. Just is he starting to get closer to being available for games?
We're close. We go through steps of things, and the BP on the field, and then the machine. Like, we do a ton of work on the pitching machine, and that velocity, the BP's in 50 to 55 miles an hour, so it's not really that impactful. The machines we run between, the breaking pitches are in the mid to upper 70s, low 80s, mid 80s, and then the fastballs get up to 90. We don't throw 96-mile-an-hour fastballs out of the machine, but that would be the next step. Then some live arms. So it's coming. Like, he is close. And my goodness, watching that guy play, how excited I was about what he could do to the game when he's involved in the game. And, he's had 19 at-bats. So we're getting there. I think the plan is get him through the weekend and let him see some arms on Monday, and then hopefully off we go. But he's been running around out there in the outfield. And that's so interesting to watch how he closes and covers ground out there, and it's fun. So hopefully it's next week, what we're hoping.
Starting this weekend, I think your last 4 series are against teams that, we're in the top 15 start of the year. How talented they all are. I guess how much of an advantage do you think it can be that all 4 of those are at home? And I guess it feels like Friday, the Chiefs being there, the 8 p.m. start, feels like it could be quite an atmosphere at Hauser.
Yeah, we have the best fans. And you look at Tuesday night, like, that game starts and you look down, I don't see the whole stadium, but great crowd. And it's going to be awesome tomorrow night. And having the Chiefs out, we've talked about how it started was, can we grab a group that maybe play the national anthem? And the next thing you know, David Black and Randy Burdett, like the whole band is here. And it was really fun. And our players they thought that was the coolest thing. And I actually think the Chiefs enjoyed the nature of baseball as a change because, the football atmosphere is so much different than maybe the flexibility you have throughout the slower pace of the baseball game. And they loved it. And I thought it was a great representation of all that's good about Florida State and how we rally around what's going on. And tomorrow night will be very unique and it'll be special.
Coach, behind the plate, Jackson's got a couple of days off. You've pinch hit Carnes a couple of times. What are you seeing from that group? And also just what's the health of them having to catch so many games over a long season?
Those guys are beat up. That's the bottom line. And it's difficult. And I do think we talk about modern day hitting and strikeout and that sort of thing. To think, just take our staff, the stuff that our pitchers are running out there. And you can look at Wake Forest if you want to also, but to think you've got 10, 12 guys that throw the ball 94 or above, that's unique and it's hard to catch. And it takes more range. You're having to block and handle mid to upper 80s secondary. It's just different. And it does beat you up. And Carnes is a freshman. And to think about a freshman stepping out here and being involved in this like he is, that's a challenge in itself. You know how hard Jackson plays. He's an energy type guy. Like he's all over the place. He runs the bases hard. He's diving around. It's a high energy catch. So they just get beat up. The good thing is we have 3 capable guys. And I have no problem with any of the 3. They're all different. It's just part of the game and them managing workload and body and rest days and practice, bullpens, and all the things that go into the position. It's not easy. And it makes you appreciate when you turn on TV and watch those guys in the big leagues that are catching 110 games. Not an easy task. And our guys they're going to be okay. They're just beat up.
Coach, kind of piggybacking on that physical load that these players have kind of throughout the season, kind of couple that with them being student athletes and having to navigate school while also, traveling for games at times. So how do these guys continue to stay motivated, not only on the baseball field, but in the classroom? How do they manage that, the mental load? You've been in that position before, have played for Florida State. So just kind of how does that go?
Well, Lauren Day and our academic support staff they're so helpful to the players, and they have more support here than I think we could realize. Yeah. Academic support, nutritional support, scheduling support, athletic training, strength and conditioning. They have a lot of support. So that support, there's always a voice that's involved in their day, and it really touches all the different facets of their student athlete experience. And I'm very involved in the discussion on their academics. I don't ever want the academic side to become a distraction because they're falling behind. If you come out here to practice in the games and your academic stuff is in order and you're in good shape, this becomes a little bit easier. If you're struggling on the academic side and you show up to that locker room and you're worried about, did I fail the test? Am I going to get caught because I didn't go to class? I didn't turn in an assignment. It starts to weigh on you. So when I ask them for a team GPA of a 3.25, I know if we're getting that, the baseball becomes a little bit more enjoyable and there's minimal distractions other than just the workload academically. But if they stay ahead of it with the support that we have, I feel like when they walk in this building, it's baseball time, and that helps keep them on pace to perform on the field and also walk out of here being really productive students and getting the degree that they want.
You've mentioned the word response like 3 or 4 times in the last couple of weeks, and that felt like the backbone of last year's team. A lot of the time, just in this sport with how much failure you go through? Just how important is that for you to check off that on the checklist this early in the year?
Yeah, the guys have been pretty resilient, and there's a lot of games to be played. And when you're playing 60, 70 games, you're going to face some adversity, and how quickly you can regroup and go to the next pitch or play. I look at each game as an independent competition. So I'm not a ranker anymore, and I'm not on the regional committee anymore. I'm not as involved as I was with I've done that, the coaches poll, and for 6 or 7, 8 years I did the help with the regional selection stuff. I don't really look at the rankings. I couldn't tell you records, rank. I enjoy the independent competition that we're about to embark on. And I enjoy the practice today. And I think as I've learned to focus on that, maybe it helps the team bounce back or go to the next game and string good performances together, because I'm not looking at this weekend as a series. Like, we play tomorrow, and we will do our best to perform and function tomorrow night. And then there's another independent competition that happens Saturday. And I guess that's my thought on how you get them to respond, just by looking at what's next. What does the next hitter bring to me when I'm pitching? What does my next pitch of my at bat, what do I need to think through to manage that one pitch? How locked in are we defensively as the pitch is delivered? How good is our ready position, our jump? Are we thinking? So to try to boil it down to that, you hope that if you have a talented group, they can respond if things are not going well. And then you hope if things are going well, they can repeat the quality performance and stay focused on the task at hand in the moment. So I know that's a pretty deep dive for you on response, but you're going to face adversity. How quickly you can go to the next inning, the next pitch. That's the trait of a championship team.
Coach, following up on that, there's been a couple guys off the bench that have stepped up for you guys recently. So that also means that some guys that were in the lineup to start are now coming out of it. Kind of two-part question. One, what are the conversations with those guys that are kind of on the bubble to get into the lineup that might be on the wrong side of it? And then two, how are you making lineup decisions going into this weekend? Is it more matchup based just because you know you've got so many options?
Well, this is a quest for what's next for the players. Like, they're hungry for it. And, I always tell them, guys, your window going to open. And you just don't know when. I don't know when. To think that Hankerson, in between that doubleheader, sometimes you think about the lineup for days and a whole night and the next morning, and you're still not sure. Well, in that case, you got about 10 minutes to figure it out. And that seemed like the right thing. And there's not a ton of overall conversation about why you're in or why you're out. These guys have to understand that we're doing what we think is best for Florida State, the program, the team, and then the individuals. So I've got to look at it that way, and they need to understand that what we do at that time, we feel like gives the team the best chance, the program the best chance to continue to grow, and it's the best thing for Florida State University baseball. So those are the themes that we have. So within that, they have to understand you're going to have times when it's your shot, and there may be a time when it's not. And you're going to have to, you may not be happy with it, but you're going to have to understand that that's how it works.
Coach,
I
go
think I got.
ahead, Coach. You're fine, Kurt. Go ahead.
Your question's probably more important than mine. You go.
Oh, now all the pressure's on. I didn't want to circle back to pitching. And Coach, this is way out of my depth. I don't want to pretend like I know anything about baseball, really. But, in talking with some of my friends that know more about the game, they would just talk about some of the late count pitches that were happening, maybe against JU here, like some off-speed breaking pitches, like on, 3-2 counts. And you talk about pitch execution. Are you still happy if they can hit the targets on those, or does that affect the entire way that you guys are going to sequence pitches, that if you are going to throw something different on a 3-2, it has to start on the first pitch of the at-bat?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways. That's a good one, Aslan. Micah, he calls pitches in a way where he knows his guy on the mound, and he also reads what he feels like the hitter is on time with at the moment. And when you get to a 3-2 pitch, like I told you, one of the ingredients of really, really good teams is the ability to strike people out. And you have to be able to bang 3-2 secondary pitches in there against the caliber of hitters that we face. You have to be able to do that. And some of them may not be strikes if it's a good enough breaking pitch that tunnels in the zone, and it may be a ball, but guys will chase it. We see our guys chase it. So making sure that you're throwing your A stuff matters. And then hopefully we get back on the rails a little bit in the fine point execution of what we're doing. It's hard to pitch in terms of this turning into a strike throwing contest. That's not what this is at this level. Like you still have to try to execute, and Micah's calling pitches in a manner, guy on the mound, what he feels with the guy at the plate. And it's challenging to back off of that in a quest to just throw a strike. So maybe that's what you felt. But I think it was more of a kind of a bump in the road for some reason. And it felt like it got exponentially more difficult to pound the zone. So that's what I feel.
Link, I kind of have a random question from a few minutes ago. I'm curious. I feel like I've always heard when the coaches pull, you talked about that, they'll just have their SIDs. A lot of coaches will do it. It's kind of not the coach actually do it. I guess like when you have been on there, you've actually taken the time to do it. I guess why do you think that's important?
Well, it has value, and people look at it. And when I was on the coaches poll, I have friends and people that are coaching, and the integrity of the poll itself demands, at least the way I approached it, that I put some time and effort into it. And, there's some Sunday nights and Monday mornings when that was not what I wanted to be doing. Hey, how did the Arkansas-Texas A&M series go? Sometimes you don't want to look into those things when you're doing the poll, but when they ask you to be on it, they're trusting that you put in the effort to give it a fair shake. And I always ask my staff to help me a little bit. They may have more familiarity with a conference, and if you're trying to rank teams in the Big 12, you might ask your staff, how does this look and feel? And then my sports information crew would also help me. The first one was clearly the hardest because sometimes I wonder if you should rank right out of the gate in this era. It's tricky. You're guessing a little bit, especially with the transfer stuff. So I tried, but it wasn't just me. I had some help. And once you have it under control, it's a little easier to make the maneuvers within the rankings as you go.
We have time for one more question today.
Any health updates, Coach? Like Bladen, I know you said that he was far off, I think maybe a few weeks ago. Is he back on track? And I know you said the Chase is getting close. Otherwise, any updates on those kind of guys?
Yeah, Bladen, it's not in the near future. Chase is in the near future. This is going to happen. And it'll be really nice when it does. You hurt for the kid to be out. It's tough. The rehab is tough, and to watch this unfold, and you're sitting there doing T work and then front toss, and then somebody's going to throw to you, and then machine, and the time in the training room is not easy. But Chase is close, and that base running piece, I love it, and I was expecting to have that dimension, and he clearly brings it. We're talking probably next week if things go